Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Santiago, student at Villa Maria College, intern at the WUFO radio station. And I will be discussing the history of WUFO, from 1925 to the present. For those of you who don't know what this radio station is, WUFO is a commercial AM radio station, licensed to Amherst, New York, and serves in the Buffalo metropolitan area. Owned by the Visions Multimedia Group and headed by Sheila L. Brown. WUFO broadcasts a hybrid urban AC and classic hip-hop radio format. However, there's more about WUFO that you actually never knew. So let us go over the history of this radio station. It all goes back to the year 1925. WUFO was first founded under the name WPDQ, and it was owned by Hiram Turner and Nelson P. Baker. However, it only operated for a day, as the Federal Radio Commission suspended its license, after the 30th of December 1925. By the time the station returned to the air in 1927, it had taken the call sign WKEN. General Order 40 proposed that it would share airtime with WKBW, which was moving to the 1470 frequency WKEN was using at the time. However, WKEN objected and proposed to move down the dial to 1040 and operate as a daytime session. Then a novel concept. In 1930, WKEN became WMAK and it became an intellectual property of a station that was displaced when the Buffalo News purchased its frequency. The other station just so happens to be WBEN. Unfortunately, the second incarnation of WMAK ceased operations in 1932, not only because of the Great Depression, but also because of the antitrust pressure on the Buffalo Broadcasting Company that owned WGR, WMAK, and WKEN at the time. The FCC ordered the station off the air, ostensibly due to quote-unquote, an unsatisfactory showing of public interest. For 14 years, the Kenmore allocation remained silent. That is until in 1941, when the North American Regional Board Agreement pushed all stations broadcasting on 1040 up the dial to 1080. In 1946, Thaddeus Putbalniak and Edwin R. Sanders of the Western New York Broadcasting Company applied to the FCC to construct a 1000-watt AM radio station on the 1080 allocation in Kenmore. A construction permit was granted in April 1947. The original call sign for the construction permit was WNYB, but when the station signed on in January 1948, it had the new calls WXRA. The city of license was changed from Kenmore to Buffalo in 1952, although its studios and facilities remained in Kenmore. For the first decade or so of its existence, WXRA was the little-noticed full-service radio station offering a wide variety of music and local news. George Hound Dog Lawrence became the Buffalo legend WBKW and started up WBLK 93.7 in 1964. He even had a show on WXRA during its early years. But he was eventually fired for playing too much race music. Apparently, the term was used for rhythm and blues music back in those days. After WKBW adopted a top 40 format in the late 1950s, and took away Lawrence's privilege of playing what he wanted, he returned to 1080 AM and attempted to purchase the station, but was outbid by noted radio station owner Gordon McClendon. In 1957, Putbalniak and Sanders sold WXRA to John Lowe, who went on to found Metro Media, which eventually owned radio and TV stations in New York City, Washington, D.C. and other cities. Lowe changed the station's call letters to Wine, and debuted a top 40 format on 1080 on the 15th of October 1957. Wine's mascot was a caricature of an inebriated Frenchman, and the station's slogan was "It goes to your head." Wine's city of license was changed from Buffalo to Amherst in 1959, although by then the station's studio and transmitter were located on Laysale Avenue, in Buffalo. Acclaimed broadcaster Gordon McClendon purchased Wine in 1960. In April, McClendon changed the call sign to Weisel, and dropped the top 40 format in favor of beautiful music. Toward the end of 1961, however, McClendon moved the Weisel call letters and easy listening format to the 1400 spot on the AM dial, formerly WBNY. He sold the 1080 frequency to Dynamic Broadcasting, which instituted the WUFO call sign and crafted the station as the first radio broadcaster program for Buffalo's African American community. Donald C. Mullings, Sr. started out doing the news and eventually worked his way up to become WUFO's general manager from 1968 until 1981. He received numerous accolades while holding the position at WUFO. Gary Bird, who went on to a radio career in New York City, began his radio career at WUFO in the 1960s. Today's 103.3 wedge was originally the FM side of WXRA, as WXRC, and then of Wine, as Wiley and then Wine FM, in the 1950s. However, Gordon McClinton retained control of the FM station after selling off 1080 to Dynamic and moving the intellectual property of Weisel and its beautiful music format to 1400. Western New York's first radio station programming to the African American community began in 1961 when Vyond station owner Gordon McClinton moved Weisel from 1080 to 1400 AM. McClinton sold the 1080 frequency to Leonard Walk, who owned a group of black formatted stations. When Ward bought the 1080 frequency in 1961, the original desired call letters were Joe for W. Joe in Buffalo. Since the Joe call letters were unavailable, the owner instead chose the WUFO call sign and named the station WUFO in Buffalo. These call letters provided the rhyming and identification with Buffalo that the owners desired. WUFO's new format began on the 2nd of November 1962 with famed Cleveland disc jockey Eddie Ager as the first on the air. Many of the nation's top African American radio personalities spent time at WUFO. Some include Frankie Crocker, Gary Bird, Herb Hamlet, Jerry Bledsoe, Thelka Meckel and her son Dabon Dancer Donovan, Don Allen, Jerry Young, Don Mullings, Sonny Jim Kelsey, Mansfield Mans Jr., 3. Al Brisbane, Jimmy Lyons, H.F. Stone, Chucky T., Al Parker, Gary Laney, Kelly Carson, Darcel Hale, Muse On, David Wilson, Byron Pitts, Mark Van, the discotizer Keith Pollard and Trevor Lynn. Jimmy Ray hosted the morning show from 1969 to 1971. Ray moved to La to record music and later produced a TV special known as The Soul Thing, in 1976. In 1972, the Sheridan Broadcasting Corporation purchased Dynamic Broadcasting, making WUFO the only African-American-owned station in Western New York. Over the years, WUFO played urban gospel music on Sundays. But in the early 2000s it became WUFO's full-time format. Until it left the gospel format in 2017, WUFO often was the only urban gospel station in Western New York. A competing gospel station was operated by the Totally Gospel Radio Network on WBBF from 1997 to 2006 and on WHLD from 2006 to 2010. WUFO was granted an FCC construction permit to move to a new transmitter site and tower, shared with WEC 1230 AM. The permit allowed WUFO to increase power to 2000 watts. But the power increase was never implemented. In 2013, WUFO 1080 was purchased by Vision Multimedia Group co-owned by Sheila L. Brown and Buffalo City Council member Darius Prygen. That made Brown the first African-American female owner of a radio station in Western New York. On the 24th of July 2017, WUFO announced it will change its format to urban AC and classic hip-hop. The format change coincided with the addition of an FM translator on W289AU, now W243DX. With the FM signal on 96.5 MHz, the station upbranded as Power 96.5, beginning the 2nd of August 2017. Well, anyways, this has been the brief history of WUFO. This is me, Ryan Santiago, signing off. Goodbye everyone, and thank you for watching.